Welcome to the Anxiety Coaches Podcast, a relaxing and informative show where we explore anxiety, panic, and PTSD, sharing how you can overcome them for life.
Aloha! Welcome back to the Anxiety Coaches Podcast. I'm your host and coach, Gina Ryan, and I am so happy to be with you again today as together we can consider the many ways to bring your mind and body back to its natural peace and calm. In today's episode, I'm talking about OCD thoughts or looping thoughts, and I wanted to actually address a question that came into our group coaching membership on Facebook, and I thought I'd get it started by reading the listener's question. I've really been struggling with OCD lately. This is a new way my anxiety has revealed itself in my adult years. Needing to go over lists and to-dos constantly, thinking that if I can control and list out my tasks, I can have control in my future. Of course, this just burdens me more. I find it so hard to set personal boundaries in myself because the relief I get from listing out my tasks, especially related to work, is instant but doesn't last long. I need help on letting go. I don't know what I'm really fearing. Would love advice. Thanks. Well, there were a lot of great answers to that in our group coaching, but I did tell our group member that I would also put her question in the queue for an episode because I thought there are many things that we can do to begin our letting go when we are having these kinds of looping thoughts. And the quote that I have at the end of today's show is really helpful here. I'd like to start with it here right now. And this is from John Hirschfield and Tom Corboy. And they said, "The problem with OCD isn't that you think too much. It's that you confuse the intensity, volume, or visibility of your thoughts with their importance." And so that can be, even as our member was saying here, that thought of, I have to list these things out. I need to go over the list. I need to go over it again and again. That is probably an intense thought, and that it's there all the time increases its visibility, as they mentioned. And that is confusing and making it seem important, but that is not making it more important. So what I was saying to our member is that I find, of course, I had compassion for her because I understand how irritating it can be to have this constant urge, especially an urge to check, whether it's your to-do list or whatever. That urge can be really compelling. And it is compulsive. So with looping thoughts, or as our member stated, OCD, it is sometimes helpful to actually anchor to an external stimulus by bringing your attention to something in your immediate environment. That is focusing on something apart from your looping thought. And that is just a gentle shift. It isn't like making yourself think something differently. It's just bringing you more into the here and now, into this moment with something more close to your senses than to your thinking. And one thing here that's important is that mindfulness meditation is where we really acquire the skill to do this. And we acquire that skill when we are practicing and doing our mindfulness meditation as a practice, so that when we need it the most, such as when you are having a looping thoughts or OCD, you can pull it up. We don't learn it in the struggle. we deepen our ability to do it and use it, but we need to practice when we are okay. We need to practice our mindfulness meditation on a daily basis so that we have this skill available to us. So I want to remind all of you to shore up your mindfulness meditation practice, not for the immediate relief of help with a bout of behaviors, but to keep the skill of being able to move from the anxious looping thought to an anchor. Now, in meditation, the anchor would be our breath or another sensation or a visual object, something in our environment if your eyes are open. And when you are, out in the world and having some looping thoughts, your anchor, again, can be your breath. It could be something with your senses, something that you see, something that you hear, something that you smell or touch. Any of those can help to anchor you in the present moment. But again, I'm encouraging you to practice your mindfulness meditation on a daily basis, even if it's starting out really slow, because it will serve you. It will save you so much time and so much aggravation and frustration in the future. It is well worth the effort that you can put in now to learn that skill. Now, to take a different tack, another thing that you could do, and this would be best used with really troubling or disturbing or trauma reinforcing kind of looping thoughts, and that would be to write, to journal, but in real detail. Not like a morning pages kind of writing where we just free associate and write whatever's coming up without any care for punctuation or grammar. But if you have real troubling or disturbing trauma reinforcing thoughts, you want to write these in real detail. Write the thought, the worry, the thing that you are afraid will happen, and do this with detail and structure. The point is to turn the scary, disturbing thought process into a story that no longer holds deep meaning by actually exhausting the whole idea on paper. So not letting it continue to loop in your head, but exhaust it on paper. This obviously will take time, but it moves the meaning of the thoughts so that they are less substantial. Remember, thoughts are information from perceptions that we have gathered either in the past, perceptions we have in the present, or perceptions we are having about the future, or any combination of these things. And the key word here that I want you to remember is perception. And that is defined as a way of regarding, understanding, or interpreting something, a mental impression. So that's kind of interesting because they didn't use the word fact, right? Because a perception is not a fact. It is a mental impression. And we have a lot of work we can do to make changes with mental impressions. Rest assured you are okay, even with the thoughts that are looping around you. The calmer that you can keep yourself by seeing that the whole thing of the OCD or the looping thoughts, however you want to frame it, by seeing that in a less fearful way, you are keeping yourself calmer. And the more access then you have to change your perceptions and the thoughts themselves. So I have a bunch of ideas here that I'd like to share to make sure that you can actually deal with this and try to remember these things as you're going forward. You want to manage your stress. Stress and anxiety can make OCD or looping thoughts worse. Most people will admit that when they are highly stressed, that they are worse in their compulsive feelings, thoughts, or behaviors. So try relaxation techniques on a regular basis. This goes back to what I was saying about mindfulness meditation. Again, we want to practice these things when we are okay so that we can do them quickly and easily when we are in a stressful situation. Relaxation can help you look after your well-being when you're feeling stressed, anxious, or even when you're just super busy. You could try mindfulness. Again, try that mindfulness meditation. We have lots of episodes that will talk about that. And bring your attention to the present moment. That's the whole point. Bring your attention to the present moment, not those perceptions, those things or the understandings or interpretations that you are having. Bring it to the present moment and sights, feelings from your senses that you can touch or hear, things that are here, that are concrete, that you can bring your mind to. It's almost like giving your mind a rest when you go there. If you started listening to, say, the birds in the background, it's a rest instead of having those thoughts looping constantly. Next, I want you to always expect that this kind of stuff is going to come up. Don't have to think, I'm never going to have looping thoughts again, or I'm never going to have OCD again, or any OCD behaviors or thoughts. Just expect that they're going to come someday. You can have an obsessive thought at any time or any place, and don't be surprised when old or even new ones pop up. Don't let it throw you. If you are expecting it and well aware that it could pop up anytime, any place, you won't be thrown off guard. You will be simply able to stay more in neutral, like, oh, there it is. I know what that is, and this too shall pass. Next, I don't want you to be sidetracked by doing everything in your life perfect. This is where perfectionism can really get us in trouble with letting go, because we don't stop at good enough. We go for perfection, even when it comes to healing ourselves, even when it comes to self-care. We go for this like perfection that is unattainable. We want to let go with everything that we can when we are in a high stress situation. Let go at good enough. It's good enough. And then you can just give yourself some breathing space. Perfection can be a feature, actually, of OCD. So notice when it arises and label it and then move on. I want you to remember that with recurring, looping thoughts, the problem is not so much the anxiety. The problem is the compulsion to make them go away. We already know that you can ride out anxiety. You know that it too shall pass. So let yourself be okay with the rising anxiety, with this compulsive need, let's say with our group members issue, to check the list. Let yourself be okay with the anxiety rising if you don't do it. It's okay. You know you will feel better, just like she said, I feel better for a couple minutes after I check, but it always comes back. So be okay with that rising anxiety and let the compulsion pass. We know the anxiety is going to pass, but often with OCD, there is not an acknowledgement that the compulsion too shall pass. So start smaller. Let yourself ride with the anxiety. It's okay. Give it a name, like in our last show. Give it a name, like Sue did. Okay, Betty, you can ride with me. We're not going to check the list, Betty, but you and I are together here for this ride. And just ride it out. Let the anxiety be there. That's okay. You already know that's going to pass. And it passes, and so does the urge for the compulsion. It will pass. But you are so afraid of the anxiety that you have to do the compulsive behavior so that the anxiety won't rise. It's backwards. You gotta let the anxiety rise by not doing the compulsive behavior. Just ride it. I know it's uncomfortable. I know lots of things in this healing process are uncomfortable, but you can do it. And also, if you think anxiety caused the problem, you will only continue to do more compulsions to get rid of it. And what does that do? It creates more anxiety. If you recognize that the compulsion to check the list, so to speak, if you can recognize that that is the problem and can stop doing it and stay with the fearful situation, the fearful thought or the fearful sensation, then the anxiety will eventually go away as you build up tolerance. So when I say that, as you build up tolerance, that is your cue that this is going to take time. You don't do it once and it's gone. And as a matter of fact, then when it comes up again, when your urge to check the list comes up again, you have a choice. You can check the list to avoid the anxious feelings, to quell those immediately. But on the other hand, you are strengthening the compulsion, and you will have the urge again and again and again. But if you take on the anxiety, let it rise, be with it, and not check the list, you are putting out the fire of the compulsions. You are building up tolerance, and over time, you will not need to do that. Now, you are already aware, if you've been listening to the show for more than a week, you must already know that the anxiety will rise and fall. That will come and go also. And you can put that fire out immediately and strengthen your compulsion to check again. Or you can just let the anxiety come, ride it, know that it's there. It's okay. That too will pass. And when the urges are gone, when they quiet down, the anxiety will quiet down too. So just let the anxiety be okay. You understand what that is, and this is the way to put that fire out. Let them come. Be with them. Don't give yourself the momentary relief. Go for the long haul, for putting this fire out for good, by feeling the discomfort of not checking the list. It'll take time, and I know that you can do it. And I look forward to hearing from any of you who are going through this and are working on it. You can send email to anxietycoachespodcast@gmail.com. And now for today's quote. To react to OCD is to jump into compulsions. To respond to OCD is to observe what your mind is doing and choose your next step. And that's from John Hirschfield and Tom Corboy. I'll be back in a few more days with another podcast. Until then, be well and aloha.
Thanks so much for joining us for today's episode of the Anxiety Coaches Podcast. Find more information at theanxietycoachespodcast.com.